Okay, here I am live. This is my first revelations from raising myself. So, the reason that I started these was because I wanted to give some value to people, but also I wanted to point out some of the things that had occurred to me um, during the course of my life that have made a difference to um, how I presented myself, how I showed up in relationships, how I showed up in my career, how I showed up as a parent. So this is really just about me exploring my past and those big moments. And I'll start off with what I feel was a really good one. It was one that really woke me up in regards to my parenting. And what it was is, wow, we're talking 25, 28 years ago now. And my mother had recently passed away. My father was home on his own, and I was visiting with my two young boys, and it was my weekend with them because my wife had left recently. And I was there with, like I said, with my two sons, and we're out the backyard and we're playing. The boys are playing, and I'm talking to my dad. And my youngest boy did something which annoyed me. So I responded with giving him a smack. Now, my father is not one of those people that would normally respond or make any sort of comment. However, in this moment, thankfully, he did, because what he said next really shook me. He turned to me and he said, "Why are you taking it out on him?" And I didn't say anything in response. And I continued on with the visit. And at the end of it, I said goodbye, went home, put my boys to bed, and I sat there thinking for quite some time about what he said. And w- the reason why it was so profound to me is because he struck a chord. It really made me or forced me to look at the way I deal with conflict. Now, it took quite a number of years to really get to the deep down part of it, because a lot of things in our life we have guilt and we have shame piled on top of it. So it tends to make reviewing things, analyzing, confronting things, it tends to make it very challenging. So I had to look at the way that I processed my anger. I had to look at the way that I expressed my anger and presented it. So it took like I said, a while before I could work my way through it, because I had to get past all the shame of, you being angry, you smack your kid, all of this sort of rubbish. So it was one of those things where once I managed to remove the shame from it and the bit of the guilt, then I could look at where it came from. And that's been one of the big things with me, is for the last at least 10 years, I've had a far better grip on my anger and being able to express it and being able to present it in a way that it's clean and doesn't cause more damage than it purports to repair. So for me, one of the big things that I learned was the presenting of anger. And it's funny, I've done some research into it, read heaps of books, sat and thought about it, sat with my anger many, many times just to try and figure it out and process it and everything like that. And it's funny, there's three types of anger. And the two that I'm going to mention are the ones that are damaging, and then there's the ones that are the one that's healthy. And the damaging ones are aggressive anger and passive anger. And aggressive anger, everyone knows, it's where people yell and scream and carry on. And that one's pretty easy because it's out there, you can't miss it. And the other one is passive anger. And passive anger is the one where we have all the guilt and the shame piled on it. We're taught don't be angry, and if you do get angry, you need to push it down and bury it and all of this sort of stuff. So you have all this shame around it. And sadly, though, when people want to express that anger, what they do is they let it out in little bursts, so that, like a pressure cooker, it's just letting out that little bit of pressure, little bit of pressure, little bit of pressure. And if you don't allow it to be expressed cleanly, which is what assertive anger is, and that's making sure your boundaries are heard, the boundaries are honored and respected, and all of this sort of thing, where if you don't know how to do that, you tend to just let it out in little bursts, and occasionally something will happen that triggers you and it'll explode out, which is probably what happened that day with my father and my youngest son. So I'm very thankful to my father for saying that, and he's said very little like that since. That was just one of those ones where I really needed to hear it. I really needed to be shaken up, because for me, in all the coaching that I've done and the observing I've done in the world, the ability to cleanly express anger or assertively express your anger is one of the things that is sadly lacking in society. And because of it, so many of us have this passive aggression where we're letting anger out in little ways. And the way I explain it is, if you summed it up like this: if someone expresses their anger in a way that basically says, you figure out why I'm angry because I'm not going to tell you, then that's passive aggression. And there's so much of that, it's unbelievable, and aggressive anger. And sadly, that's one of the major contributors to people's challenges nowadays, is that ability to deal with your anger, to express the anger, to have it heard, to have it acknowledged, and be able to explore and negotiate a way to get some sort of resolution so that your anger is less volatile, less extreme, so that you get triggered less. So for me, that was one of my big revelations, courtesy of my father. And that's basically it. These calls are going to be exactly that. It's just me talking for a little while about something that I realized, and it could be presented to me by someone else. It could be a situation I found myself in. It could be reading a book or listening to a CD where something was said and it turned a switch in my head and allowed me to make progress in some form. So that's what these are all about. I'll keep them generally below 10 minutes. Occasionally they'll go longer. They'll never go longer than 15 because people are busy and I want to give them just quick little nuggets that'll help them. So my question for you is, if you're angry and you find yourself exploding it out or doing the pressure cooker, let it out in little bursts, ask yourself why you're taking it out on that person. Because the anger is generally something you have to deal with, not them. So you need to learn how to process it, to confront it, to deal with it, and then be able to express it cleanly to the person they may be involved, or they could just be an innocent bystander. Either way, a really good one for you to take away from this would be, have a look at your anger and how you do it. Are you doing it effectively, or are you doing it in a way that doesn't really reach a resolution? Okay, so that's it for tonight. If you have anything you'd like me to explore, express, explain, feel free to send me a DM. Other than that, look after yourself. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one. Bye.